In this episode, veteran crocodile farmer Luan Nam is begged by his loved ones to give up the family business and settle for something less dangerous. But before Luan Nam decides to retire, he makes a fatal mistake. Trying to scare a female crocodile away from her eggs so that he can harvest them, he suddenly slips and falls into the crocodile enclosure. He is ripped to shreds as his crocodiles all pounce on him, tearing meat from bone. Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce. In Siem Reap, Cambodia's second largest city, crocodile farms provide an income for many individuals and their families. There are more than 2,800 crocodile farms in Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. They house more than 1.53 million crocodiles between them. Farming these huge reptiles in Southeast Asia is big business, and they are mostly exported to China, Thailand, and Vietnam. But harvesting apex predators is a deadly game. 72-year-old Luan Nam owned one of these crocodile farms. He had been in the business for years. His farm was optimized for crocodile farming, using minimal inputs for maximum outputs. The Cambodian farmer had had close calls with the animals on his farm before. He grew them to collect their eggs, sell their meat, and sell their skin. It provided a meager income for him and his family, but he knew the business inside out. Following the dangerous incidents that had happened before, his family had begged him for years to close up and find something else to do. But it was a way of life for him. In fact, he was president of the local Crocodile Farmers Association and considered an expert in the field. The concrete enclosure was a bleak environment for the crocodiles. They had access to a pool to cool off in and cages in which they could lay their eggs. The square enclosure had no environmental enrichment or form of stimulation. They were tossed raw meat a couple of times a day. There were so many crocodiles that fights often broke out as they competed for space and food. There were a variety of crocodile species at the farm. They ranged in size and color. Most lay sunning themselves on the hard concrete surrounds. Others lay submerged in the dark green pool, their eyes and nostrils poking above the surface. But these are the conditions on most of Cambodia's crocodile farms. Recently, crocodile farmers have formed an unlikely bond with conservationists who are trying to keep the wild populations alive. Gangs of crocodile hunters throughout Cambodia who illegally capture crocodiles from the wild and sell them to farms. There are now less than 400 wild Siamese crocodiles in Cambodia, and although farmers have contributed to their demise, they may now provide the answer. There are thought to be around 900 farms in Cambodia with a total stock of more than 250,000 crocodiles. But farmers are now part of their conservation. As well as selling them for meat and leather, farmers are transporting them to conservation teams to release individuals into the wild to boost the wild population. In May 2023, Luan was checking the crocodile cages on his farm. A female had laid a clutch of eggs overnight. For Luan to collect them, he needed to get the crocodile out of the cage. He ushered her out, but she was reluctant to move. She was protective of her clutch and hissed at Luan when he approached. Slowly, she began to move toward the exit of the cage. Luan held his stick out in front of him, a feeble barrier between himself and the fearsome crocodiles. He used the stick to whack the crocodiles if they came too close, or to block any lunges made toward him. He had done this hundreds of times before, but this time he made a mistake. As the crocodile pulled herself out of the cage, she eyed Luan. Instead of slipping back into the water with the others, she wheeled her head around and snapped her jaws. She was lightning fast. She grabbed the stick in her powerful jaws and tugged her head backwards. Luan, who had a firm grip on the other end of the stick, was pulled toward the crocodile. He lost his footing and fell down into the enclosure where 40 others were lying in wait. They immediately turned their heads as he crashed onto the floor, and they started to crawl toward him. Their eyes were unblinking, their mouths set in a fixed grin. It was like a huge swarm advancing as all 40 individuals closed in on him. He had nowhere to go and nothing to protect himself with, not even his stick. One crocodile lunged forward and caught him in its jaws. Luan knew he was in trouble. With a bite force exceeding 3,500 pounds per square inch, there was no way he was going to break free. They are known to grab their prey and not let go. Their apparently fat necks are actually extra jaw muscles, enabling them to latch onto prey much bigger than themselves and hold on to them until they drown under the water. Luan knew this was very bad news. Even if he managed to free himself from one crocodile, he had another 39 to contend with. Even so, he fought back, hitting the crocodile on its snout as it attempted to drag him toward the water. The others continued to approach. Some emerged from the pool, their scaly bodies dripping with water, their heads swaying from side to side as they moved toward him with their characteristic ungainly walk. As the tussle between man and reptile ensued, the crocodiles became excited. They were enticed to Luan as he scrambled about on the concrete floor. He was dragged closer and closer to the water. The pain of the bite was surging through his body. The crocodile's sharp teeth bit through skin, muscle, and bone. He cried out, but nobody could help him. He was on his own now. He was at the mercy of 40 hungry crocodiles with 60 million years of killing instinct packed into their armored bodies. Another crocodile lunged forward and grabbed hold of Luan. Then another and another. As more crocodiles began to bite their keeper, it turned into a feeding frenzy. It was a bloodbath as each enormous crocodile fought for its chance to grab some fresh meat. Luan was dragged into the water. The swarm of crocodiles leapt in after him. In the water, he was ripped to shreds. The water frothed and foamed and splashed around him. Within minutes, Luan was dead. It was a gruesome death. The enclosure was covered in red, like a scene from a horror movie. When emergency services arrived on the scene, he had been dragged from the water, back onto the concrete surrounds. He was surrounded by the huge reptiles. Some had retreated to the water. Others were clearly still interested in the body. The scene before them was traumatizing and shocking for all who witnessed it, not least of all his family. Emergency services struggled to retrieve Luan's body from the enclosure. Whenever they came close, the crocodiles would advance. Their mouths were open wide and they hissed menacingly at the intruders. They were protecting their prey. One of the policemen spotted a crocodile lying stock still beside the water. He noticed something inside its mouth. When he looked a little harder, he saw that it was one of Luan's black sandals in its jaws. It was a chilling image that will haunt him forever. Eventually, the 72-year-old's remains were recovered and his family was able to lay him to rest. His traumatized family decided to sell the farm and all the crocodiles, something they had wanted Luan to do for years. But sadly, he had never listened.